welcome to Exploring Hobbies. I'm Jamie Fouché, and with me today I have Roseanne Kowalczyk, and she is going to be sharing her hobby of birdwatching. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, thanks for joining us. So why don't we start by just sharing with everybody how you got into this hobby?
It was the infamous high school teachers. There were two of them at Lakeshore High School that were biology teachers and started a birdwatching club. And all of the members were young men. And I happened to be dating one of those young men. And so it was the thing we did on weekends instead of the other usual dates that people do. And I have just stayed with the hobby the whole time.
I think that's great, you know, and it's nice to hear that, teachers I think don't always realize some of the influence that they have sometimes, and here you are all these years later, and this is still a passion of yours.
And,
so
and they are actually both two very good birding buddies of mine still to this day.
Wonderful.
That's
Wonderful. So let's help everyone understand more about what bird watching is all about. When you go bird watching, what do you do?
Well, it seems like it can be very much social. It's all about being outside, seeing the green, getting some exercise, fresh air, but then exploring the world of our, feathered friends out there. And getting started can seem to be a daunting task for a lot of people because there's at least 600 species of birds in the United States during high time when everything is migrated here. And so how do you sort that all out? For somebody who's a beginner, I think that when you use a field guide that has a real big tell, we're very visual people. The Birds of Michigan has a color guide. So you go in here and you say, well, I saw this blue bird and I'm not really sure what it is. You get to the blue section and then it will go through them by order of size. So it starts with the smallest and it works its way up. But then you can advance beyond this and start to learn that there's different categories of birds. So we know there's hummingbirds. We know the easy ones like ducks and herons. But then you get into the smaller birds, and that's where it can start to get to be a little bit more complicated. And you can get into a lot of other field guides. I think that if you really want to learn how to enjoy birds and how to tell what they are, that you need to look at either something like Sibley's Birding Basics, which is pretty much a classy version of Birdwatching for Dummies.
Okay.
And both of these have great information that remind you, how do you look at a bird? How do you tell, when I'm looking at this bird, what am I looking for? And one of the things I like to teach people that come bird watching with me is start at the front and work your way back. What size is the beak? What are we talking about? Shape of the bird, where are they at? What type of habitat are they in? And all of those things can help you. And then you can get into more advanced field guides. And again, I really like David Sibley's. And this takes birds and puts them by order that they are in. So for example, there's an entire section in here that would be just on pelicans, and it puts all of the pelicans and their allies or related birds together. You've got that single page, and then you can go through and learn more about them individually, and it goes through all of the birds that you can possibly see in the eastern United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I was to come out on a birding trip with you, what would I expect to do? Walk me through what that might be like.
Well, we teach people about binoculars because we want to make sure that you're understanding how to use them. If you don't know how to use your binoculars, then you're going to be lost. And I like to explain to people a few basics. For example, you've got to have them so that they are the right distance for your pupils. Otherwise, you get the circular shadows around your eyes. So you got to make sure that the interpupillary distance is the right way. If you wear glasses, then you can retract your eye cups and keep your glasses on, no flipping up. If you don't, then the eye cups come out and they go right to your eyes. You've got to learn how to use the focus wheel, how to feel comfortable with them. And as you're looking at birds, we like to use the face of a clock to explain where a bird is. So it's up in that tallest tree and it's at 3 o'clock, about 5 feet in. Keep your eye on the bird and then just put the binoculars in front of your eye, just like when you're at the eye doctor's.
Okay.
As opposed to if you do this and try to find the bird, it will be very difficult.
Got it.
It's really good to go with people who obviously know what they're doing because it just helps to get you feel more comfortable with the whole hobby. It's a lot about going outside, and especially this time of year, listening. What do I hear out there? Where are those sounds coming from? What sounds the most interesting? Let's try to find it. And then just following the sounds, looking at the bird, getting a description of it. Some people just want to go outside and enjoy it and listen and look, and they don't really care about what is that exactly, you know? Other people definitely want to get into oh, I want to know what this is, how many types of birds did we see today, where's my checklist.
Okay. And so do you have like a methodology then for kind of documenting what you see? How do people do that?
Yes, there are a lot of checklists. I've got a couple that I brought today. One is the Detroit Audubon's checklist of birds, and it's very complete. So you would go through and make, you know, they've got different areas for locations, and you can use this 3 different times and be able to check everything off. I also brought the checklist of the birds that's from the Etzel and Eleanor Ford House where I do bird walks.
Okay.
And we've had 195 species there in the 20 years that I've been leading bird walks. And so this is a pared down version of that, because this is the possibility of what you're really going to see there, most likely. It's pretty hard to get something that's not already on this list. And you can either do your list as you go, which I find that a lot of beginners like to do, or write it down in a notepad as they're walking, or keeping track of it on a list in your smartphone. Or you can do what I do, and at the end of the day, or at the end of the outing, just sit down and go through and mark everything all at once.
And so where do you go to bird watch? Is there kind of some reason to that, you know, in terms of, you know, there's qualities about a place that make it better for bird watching than others? Or?
Certainly, yes. So something that's close by is always a great way to get started, because if it's too much work, you're not going to, you know, it's like any other hobby. You want it to be easy. So we have a fabulous Metro Park system here, the Huron-Clinton Metro Parks. All of them are great places to go bird watching because they have diverse habitats. They've got treed areas. Different birds go in forests. Different birds go at forest edges. Different species of birds will go in fields and then in water. So the more types of habitat that you have, the more diversity you get and the more fun it's going to be. My favorite place to go birding, just because it's in such close proximity to my house, is the Etzel and Eleanor Ford House. That's 5 minutes from my home, and it's fabulous. We are all on a wonderful migratory path here. And so to be able to be closer to the water and watch the birds that use the Great Lakes on the east side or the west side of the state are both really good ways to be able to get a lot of diversity in birds. And then as far as other places that are notable in Michigan, we've got Whitefish Point Bird Observatory, which is up in the Upper Peninsula in paradise, no doubt. And that is a fabulous place to go because it's known for its hawk migration in the spring. So at the end of April, it is the place to be if you want to be where the raptor show is. See lots of eagles go by, a lot of our hawks, our ospreys, our falcons. That's a good spot, definitely.
Are there any types of like rules or guidelines that people need to follow and know about in terms of like maybe protected species or something like that?
Well, there is birding protocol. First of all, you want to be respectful of people's property. It's really hard not to want to just forge ahead and get a better look or whatever. So you want to be respectful of property. Most of our species that are protected would have some type of a barrier there. So we have piping plover in our state, which is an endangered species. During the time when they are very vulnerable, there's actually piping plover rangers and there's exclosures, so you wouldn't have to worry about somebody getting to them. As far as general protocol when it comes to birding, of course you want to be somewhat quiet because you want to be able to hear and respect everybody else's time out of doors. I brought some camouflage as a tell that wearing white or red or yellow is not necessarily good. Birds have really good vision. So you're going to tip them off that you're approaching sooner than you might want them to, sooner than your binoculars might allow you to get a good look.
So you want to try to blend in with your surroundings.
Be a little bit sneaky.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And make sure that your clothing is something that's going to allow you to be able to access a lot of areas. So good waterproof boots and something that has lots of pockets like this vest that I have on, so you can load it up with everything that you need.
Got it. So, and since you brought up everything you need, you mentioned the binoculars. Is there other equipment that is pretty typical that people would need as they start to get into this hobby?
Other than your binoculars and your field guide, I usually like to take some type of cleaning system for my binoculars because you never know what's going to happen to them. So this is a great way to get the dust off of them as you're traveling, and then some of the cloths and the cleaning solutions, you never want to use any type of paper products on them. So tissue is a no-no because it can ruin the coatings that are on your binoculars. There's great apps that you can take along. So on my phone, I've got, the Sibley app, which allows you not only to see the bird and get a look at what its range is like and when it's going to be around, but you can also listen to the bird, which is not something that you're going to get out of a field guide. Of course, you want to wear something that's going to give you some shade over your eyes, so either a baseball cap, a tilly cap, something like that. And that's about it. It's a pretty low demand when it comes to the amount of money that it takes to, once you invest in your binoculars, it's all about the travel time and money that it takes you to get from place to place. Unless you want to graduate and get into a telescope. And that's for long distance use for people who are very serious about maybe scanning a shoreline for shorebirds or scanning the skies for hawks or things like that. It's a lot bulkier and most people don't choose it as something that they take out every time that they go birding. And more expensive, of course.
And so price-wise, what can people expect? Like, are there different ranges of binoculars, for example? And kind of, do you recommend people might start with something lower until they get into it? How does that work?
Well, it's like every other hobby. It seems that you start at the low end and then you say, darn, I wish I would have known I was going to like this much. Then I might have spent that much more on that pair of binoculars that I really liked. I'm on my 4th pair of binoculars in my 40 years of birding. But I don't think I'm getting anything better because I have the Swarovskis, and these binoculars are $2,800 retail. So you can spend a lot of money. But does that really make a difference to the average person? How much are you going to be doing something like this? Obviously, this is not the choice for most people unless you're doing it all the time. I find that the Eagle Optics Vortex binoculars are fabulous. This is their Denali. It's an 8x42, so that's the magnification is the 8 power. The 42 is this distance. And these binoculars run only $180. They've got a guarantee. If you buy them from a dealer and something happens to them, you send them back, they get fixed, and they are fabulous. You really could get by with these forever. You don't really need to upgrade. And then there's something that's in between all of these. So it's very doable. And I like these better than the real small compacts. I find that the compacts just don't give you that field of vision that you need to really be able to find birds. People like to, I'll just get something really small. This is really a little bit better if you're going to get into something. An 8x42 is a nice way to start.
So you've mentioned that this is social. So how do people into birdwatching find each other? Are there clubs? How does that work?
Well, I would recommend if somebody's looking to do something like this, to go to your Audubon societies. So Michigan Audubon has wonderful events that they have all through the year. One of their biggest is coming up. It's the Tawas Birding Festival, and that's the weekend of, I think it's May 15th, 16th. And you can just go to Michigan Audubon's website. They have trips all through that weekend, Thursday through Sunday. They have speakers. They have Birds and Brews. Talk about being social.
There you go.
That's a good night.
Day of birding.
Yeah, little birding, little brewing. Right.
That sounds good.
And then most of the local Audubon societies, Detroit, Oakland, Grosse Pointe, Macomb, they all have their own websites and they all have their field trips listed. And so this is the time of year, early spring, all the way through May, June. I mean, there's things that are going on all summer. They will take you out. They'll show you different places that you can go to really learn the hobby, join other people that are going. Birders love to be able to share their knowledge. Here, you want to try these binoculars? Look through this telescope. This is what this is. Showing people the difference of why this bird is this as opposed to what you might think that it is.
Great. So it sounds like in Michigan, there's actually a lot of opportunity for people in terms of places to go that are both really close home in terms of being in southeastern Michigan, but throughout the state. Have you traveled outside of the state? Where are some of the other places maybe where you've gone?
Oh, I've birded in every state other than Alaska.
Okay.
So I've birded in every state, and typically what I've done is I have gotten in touch with people that I know are part of birding clubs and said, where's the hot spots? Of course, there's magazines that talk about that. You know, everything has changed when you can search for things. Now it's a little bit different. And I've also done a lot of traveling outside of the country to observe birds. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. What are some of the more memorable, you know, birds that you've seen in terms of maybe something that was very rare or very exotic?
Well, in the last 2 years, we've had what has been called, you know, snowy owl years, where you get this eruption of them because there actually are very plentiful up in the Arctic. So they're leaving that area because there's so many of them. They have to go out in search of food. So we have had fabulous looks at snowy owls. And this is a picture that was taken up just outside of Traverse City.
Beautiful.
Unbelievable, isn't it? This year is what they call an eclipse year. And so it's the second year that snowy owls have come down. There's 4 of them that have transmitters on them. And you can follow them by going to Project Snowstorm's website. And you can see all of the different places that they are in the state and then travel to those places. So getting to see a bird like this is always just, you know, unbelievable. Probably one of my favorite local things was I've got some property in northern Michigan, and I was on the lake just floating around in the canoe, looking at the eagles, watching the loons. And if you're real quiet, the loons get very used to you. You know, you just don't want to make sudden movements, and they'll start to feed closer to you. And there was one that came and dove under the canoe and went right under it to the other side, and I got to watch it swimming underwater because the water was that clear and it hadn't dove deep.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
That sounds really amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. You've got quite a few other photos with you. Will you share with us some of what you've got?
Absolutely. Well, the time is coming now for ruby-throated hummingbirds. They will be here in about mid-April, and the peak of migration is the first 2 weeks of May. So certainly a great time to go out and look for them, or to put up a feeder in your yard in case you're so inclined to do a little bit lower impact of birding. But this is a good bird to look for as far as spring migration goes. And if you have a home or a property that you're renting up north, it's good to take a feeder and just attract them closer to you so you can watch them. One of my favorite families of birds would be the woodpeckers. This is a pileated woodpecker, and this is a red-bellied woodpecker. And it's fun to look for them because they don't sing like other birds. They rat-a-tat-tat, right? They drum. That's what woodpeckers do instead of singing. So if you hear that drumming noise, then you know that you need to look for one of them. And I just think they're fun because look at how they hang on. They've got that tripod going. They've got the tail, and both of their feet are creating a tripod that allows them to travel up and down the trees in search of things. And such unique adaptations for them as far as how they feed. And this is the original woody woodpecker, of course. So, you know, fun to look at him. And then you can get some of those really remarkable moments, like getting to see a great blue heron catch something.
Wow.
If you're quiet enough, if you're still enough, if you're just out there chilling with nature, you get to see things like this.
And so, you've got some beautiful photos. So do you have photographers that come out with you sometimes? Are birders sometimes a little bit of a both? How does that work?
There is definitely an overlap there. There's definitely an overlap, and a lot of people graduate from one to the other, and it works both ways. I've had people who've been photographers and come along on bird walks, and they start taking pictures. In fact, the gentleman that's responsible for all of these pictures, he started taking pictures of birds and bringing them to me and saying, what is this? What is this? And I'm looking at his pictures going, this is such a good picture that I don't think I've ever seen it this well, even through binoculars. And so then he's gotten to be a much more avid birder and still a great photographer, but it's worked more towards birding. A lot of birders like the aspect of, well, now I want to get a picture of what I've seen. Now I want to graduate into that. That's something that I haven't done too much of just because I feel that I carry enough equipment. And I don't want to add to it. And plus there's people out there that do such a good job that, you know, I can appreciate their photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. How do you know if you've seen something that is just unusual for that area? And is there a way that you like report that? Like, how do you know, like, you know, something doesn't normally come this far north? Wow, that's really incredible. How do you start to build that knowledge, and where would you go to tell someone, hey, I saw this?
Well, most of the field guides have maps in them, range maps, and so you can tell, wow, is what I'm looking at supposed to be here? This, I know I saw this bird that was red and black, and you end up finding that the habitat is over here. Well, now it's back to the drawing board. I think I better be looking and seeing really where a red and black bird is, and if you look hard enough, you'll find it's probably a scarlet tanager
Something
that's
else.
supposed to be here. So the range map is a good way to include or exclude something. And then there's also a program that's called eBird, and when you sign up for it, you can put all of your data in there, and it will tell you, you know, probably not, you know, this is not going to be an area that you would normally find this bird, and they may ask you for more details before they would accept that. But you'd be, you know, tipped off that that is not something that would be normal. You can also call all of the Audubon societies. Everybody will, there's going to be somebody that's going to return your phone call and say, okay, tell me what you saw, and let's try to work through it and figure out if it's going to work for you or not. There's a new app that's put out by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it's called Merlin. And what it allows you to do as a beginner is to put your information into the program and say, I'm seeing this bird, it's about the size of a robin, it's in this type of habitat, and you list 3 different colors. And the program gives you back, here's your potentials.
Okay.
Now, and so as you see them, you can go, well, I know it's not these first 3.
It's not what I'm
might be
seeing,
this
yeah.
one. Okay, so I've narrowed it down now. I think it's number 4 on this. Really wonderful. They haven't quite advanced to the point where you can point your phone and it'll tell you what you're looking at. There's still a little bit of intrigue and mystery involved in sleuthing through the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you have any particularly favorite stories of something that's happened or an encounter that you've had while you've been bird watching that you want to share?
Encounter. Well, I think probably just looking at California condor before it was extinct in the wild, before they captured the last ones. Watching that bird come over the mountain range in California, the size of a small airplane, was unbelievable. So getting to see something like that and sharing it with the people that you're with is very, very unique. And then, of course, every time that I'm out at the Etzel and Eleanor Ford House leading people and getting them to see something for the first time and seeing the exuberance that they have once they've spent, a couple of hours with us, getting to look, hopefully, a lot through the telescope. Because that makes a big difference when you're a first-time birder and you're maybe not really adept with binoculars yet. It's nice to go out and be able to, take those looks, as many as you can, through the telescope. And it makes you really appreciate what you're looking at and what to look for. And so that's always very special to be able to share that and to have people come back to you and say, this has just been like the best morning. It's so memorable. I'm going to do this again, or I'm going to go check it out at the Metro Park and see what else I can see.
And how often are tours run there?
At the Ford House, we do them once a month, and in May, the first 2 weeks of May, we usually do at least a half dozen of them, because that's peak of migration, and we want to give people as many opportunities to get out there as possible. And all of those are listed on their website.
Okay, great. And so if someone's looking to try this for the first time, it sounds like that's one option. What other recommendations would you have in terms of someone just wanting to see if they're even something that they're interested in?
I would go to the Detroit Audubon website and look at their list of field trips that they have. It is very extensive, and they've been doing this for so many years, 50 years. Actually, they've just celebrated their 75th anniversary.
Wow.
So I'm sure that they've been doing field trips for a great portion of those years. And because there's so much diversity all through all of the counties that they take you on, it's not like they're just in Wayne County. You can pick and choose something that's close to you. And that all of that is either online, or you can just call the office and find out where they're going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there different types of bird watching? Like, are there people who kind of start to develop a preference for one type versus another type, or does it not really work that way?
As far as birds, sure, there's your fair weather birders that like to come out in the spring migration. There's those people that really love warblers and they just want to be in the woods and see that. And then there's, the people who love to do shorebirds or ducks or raptors. Raptors is a really big one, following the raptors. Oh, Whitefish Point is great in the spring and Cape May is wonderful in the fall. And so they may follow things like that. There's also different types of birding. If you want to think about, okay, we're talking about going out with a checklist, learning things, keeping track of them. But there's events like the Big Sit. You can sit in one place for 24 hours. Obviously, breaks are allowed.
Yeah.
And you try to see how many species of birds you can see from one spot in 24 hours, which is a little different to do.
Yeah, very different.
Right, a little bit different. I participate in the Grosse Pointe Birding Challenge, and that is each of the 5 Grosse Points has their own team, and it really speaks to habitat as to the diversity of birds that you can get depending upon what's out there. Of course, it's always fun if you have good diversity and good birds and you can win.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing. And let's see, what else? There's a gentleman in the area who decided that he was going to start biking and birding. So that is the only way that he birded last year. It was all by bike. And as part of the Taoist Festival this year, Michigan Audubon is offering a birding by bike. So you can go out with them, and it's not, obviously it can't be high paced because you're stopping and you're starting, but it's a different way to get out there, green birding, so to speak.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Well, and a way where maybe you can cover a little bit more ground and get from one type of habitat to another place that's different a little faster, other than having to get in a vehicle and
in and out of the car. How do you see
Yeah.
really well when you're in a vehicle? And you can't really do that experience with a lot of other people at one time, whereas if you're all out biking, of course you can stop. I think it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked a little bit about where people go, and it sounds like there are quite a few places here, and you've mentioned that you've done some traveling with it. What are, if someone wants to just stay local, what are some of the places right here in southeastern Michigan? You've mentioned the Edsel and Eleanor Ford House. What else do we have right here in southeastern Michigan?
Well, again, the Metro Park system, the one that's in Farmington Heritage Park, that is a great place to go to. They've got naturalists there that can help you and tell you where the different birds are. Lake St. Clair Metro Park is another good spot to go to. That's in Harrison Township. They have nesting great horned owls, and she nests in a bucket, a laundry tub.
Wow.
And so she's got, her babies have hatched, and that you can go out there and you'll be able to see her from the trail very easily. They usually have somebody that can let you know right exactly where she's at. And that's a good way to really kind of get your feet going. You're on a trail, you're on something that's not too difficult, and then they also have a big feeding station that's set up there, so you can sit inside and get to watch the birds and get used to them coming to feeders, and then go out and do their trail system and be able to see everything.
And see it. That is so great. Roseanne, thank you so much for sharing all your passion with us. If just kind of as some parting thoughts, if someone wants to get started, where should they go for more information?
I think I probably would go to the Michigan Audubon website, and I would go through there and look. There's 36 different chapters of Audubons within our state, and that can direct you to who is the closest, so that you can then align yourself with them and get out onto their birding situations and whatever they're doing. And while you're there, check with the Michigan Audubon and see, not only do they have the Taoist Festival, they have the Cerulean Warbler Festival. We'll be hosting the Midwest Birding Symposium, which is really going to be a fabulous event this September in Bay City. We're lucky to be able to host this for all of the Midwest here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you again. It's been really great learning more about your hobby.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us today, and please watch for future episodes of Exploring Hobbies.